Hey everyone, I'm Parthiban Srinivasan. I'm a lead application developer in VMware IT. I work for the SaaS team and the IT side. In today's webinar, I'll be walking you through VMware IT's journey to the cloud native architecture. The way I've structured this presentation is first we start with what prompted us to move into the cloud native architecture. How did we move to the cloud native architecture? What are the different VMware products that we have used, which helped us enable move to the cloud native architecture? Welcome you all. Good morning and good evening, everyone. Let's start with our journey. So what prompted us to move to cloud native architecture? Initially, we had multiple applications. So over the last couple of decades, most of the enterprises followed the same MVC pattern or MVC architecture, and this worked out well for everyone, right? Even today, many enterprises run this kind of an architecture. So this, in today's world, is called as a monolithic architecture. The reason being, everything is clubbed into one single application or one single artifact and gets deployed. The diagram represents a typical MVC architecture, right? So we have users who request for access or who visits the website. The requests are load balanced through a load balancer. The applications are deployed onto a web server which has a Java runtime, for example. These are deployed onto multiple VMs for high availability. There are other services, typically those were service-oriented architecture services that these applications invoke. And these applications by itself has multiple services. For example, authentication services, maybe an order service, maybe a payment service, a support service. Everything was bundled into as a single application and deployed. And these applications were communicating through a database to a database, and these databases were also clustered. Now, what is the problem with this architecture? On a given day, everything looks fine, but when there is a spike in the number of requests coming in, it's a very challenging task to get this scaled up, right? A vertical scaling is possible, which means you can increase RAM or storage or anything on the fly. But a horizontal scaling where I need to include more VMs, I need to deploy my applications onto multiple VMs, I need to deploy these applications onto a different data center. This poses a challenge, and in some cases, this leads to a lot of customer satisfaction issues. And also it is a lot of manual activity which has to be coordinated across multiple teams. The other problem is these applications are prone to multiple issues because there are services clubbed as a single application, right? So even if one service was failing due to memory leakage, for example, the whole application goes down. This is not what we want, right? We want to have uh, a collection of services which can be scaled out as and when needed. So this prompted us to think about we thought about what were these problems. We analyzed it, and I think this is the same case for most of the enterprises, right? So the first problem starts with the tight coupling of components. As I said, if you have like 5 services embedded into a single application, you will not be able to scale out, or you're not all the services are dependent on each other, and one service going down will bring down the entire application. uh, Complex code base. When we start with the development of such monolithic architecture applications, we start with a simple code base. We start with a smaller team, but over a period of time, and this is true for many of these applications, we see that the application has grown beyond its size. It is difficult to maintain it. And also the people who are onboarding to these applications, it becomes difficult for them to ramp up. This eventually also causes a slower deployments. The reason being, any change to any of the service within this application, it has to go through a complete suite of testing. The infrastructure is not flexible enough. So we have to have defined periods of deployment windows, and that is when you can get this deployed. What that meant was waterfall models was the best suited for these kind of monolithic applications. It was good. People really liked that. We had deployments like once a month, or at the maximum, we'll have like twice a month. The biggest challenge I would say was the scalability option that we had, right? As we saw in the previous slide, scaling out these applications was very, very difficult. It required a lot of manual effort and coordination across multiple teams: the application development team, the infrastructure operations team, and multiple teams, release teams, and others, right? This was also error prone. With all these limitations, what happened was the application's availability was slowly decreasing. We were never able to match the 4 nines availability. So what was the solution? So that's when we had the need for modern applications. What is it? What do we mean by modern applications? Modern applications are built based on a specific architecture, right? Uh, so they are not a single monolithic application, rather it is broken down into small composed services. These services are independent of each other. They are loosely coupled and they can exist on their own, which means a developer can build it, test it, run it, and deploy it without any dependency on any other team or any other application. These applications, since they are self-dependent, they are very resilient. They are resilient. These are designed for resiliency. Any failures on the hardware, any failures on the underlying VMs, any upgrades that happened would not impact my application. We deploy or we develop applications based on these factors. These applications are agnostic to the underlying operating systems and also the infrastructure, which means I could deploy the same application to multiple clouds. With faster development and faster testing cycles, and with the infrastructure being so flexible, I could orchestrate my releases. And today, many companies, they have releases at the minimum of 2 releases per day. This gave us a rapid agility, and all the CDCI and the DevOps process contributed to it. The infrastructure and the application itself is isolated and immutable. What that means is, once you create an infrastructure, you do not upgrade it. Same goes for your application as well. When there is a change, you create a new one, right? For example, your Docker images, right? Any new change, you create a new version of the Docker image, and that's the version that runs in your staging and production instances. So with this in mind, we started our cloud native platform journey in 2014. Docker helped us. I mean, the introduction of containers helped us to start with this journey. Docker was introduced in 2013, and we did a POC early in 2014 for many of our digital applications. These POCs were not productionalized. It was just some workloads running on containers. These are non-critical workloads that we wanted to experiment with. Most of the teams were trained on these containers, and that was the start for us to eventually move into the cloud native applications. In 2015, we decided to move a set of non-critical workloads that was running on a LAMP stack. This was more like a lift and shift. So we moved these applications from the monolithic infrastructure into containers, and we moved it to production. We took a chance there because, and it was easy for us because these were not so critical applications, and any failures, we were able to recover a little bit faster. In 2016, with Tanzu Application Service, it was called as Pivotal Cloud Foundry prior to this. We introduced Tanzu Application Service in our ecosystem, and we started moving the dev and test workloads on this one. Again, this was more like a test bed for us. We started experimenting on migrating applications. In fact, this was more of a refactoring than a migration. So in 2015, we did a lift and shift. In 2016, when we deployed applications onto Tanzu application service, we started doing refactoring. We'll go into the steps of how we did the refactoring in the later slides. In 2017, when VMware decided to go SaaS, it was very critical for us to keep our applications healthy and running all through. Now, the availability was a very, very critical factor, and so was scalability. So 2017, we moved some of the most critical workloads onto the Tanzu application service. With this, we achieved most of these applications. We achieved 3 nines and above, and with that as a baseline, we started moving more and more applications. 2018, we did a platform upgrade. We moved the foundation to VCF, vCloud Foundation. 2019, we added one more portfolio here. We had the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. This is a Kubernetes-based solution, and we moved some of the workloads into Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. So today, there is SaaS IT applications or the VMware SaaS IT applications. They run either on the Tanzu application service platform, or it runs on the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. And primary reason, again, being availability and scalability. So before we start, let's just have a quick recap of what is cloud and cloud native applications. They're not the same, right? What is cloud? So cloud provides on-demand delivery of infrastructure and software. It provides you on-demand delivery of compute, storage, databases, and all type of application service. The best part is we don't have to maintain this infrastructure. All these are managed through APIs. What is a cloud native application? Cloud native applications are applications which are architected to utilize the cloud to its maximum potential. Cloud native technology empower organizations to build and run scalable applications in modern dynamic environments like the private cloud, public cloud, or the hybrid cloud. What is not a cloud native application? An application deployed onto a cloud does not make it a cloud native application. So there are some designs and considerations that has to be an architecture that has to be fed into these applications to make it a pure cloud native application, right? So do we have a problem with the existing monolithic architecture? Yes and no. Not all applications need to be a cloud native application. For example, an ERP system. ERP system have been proven and they have been stable over a period of time, and there is no reason for us to scale out an ERP system, right? There is no on-demand increase on an ERP system. And again, scaling out ERP system comes with a cost. But do they even require a scaling out? That depends on your needs. Most of the enterprises, they know what is the capacity needed, and they have provisioned infrastructure that is required, enough infrastructure that is required for these applications. All right, now that we started our journey, what are the different approaches that we had? We started with a lift and shift, as I mentioned. There are advantages and disadvantages with this approach, right? Now, lift and shift applications do not mean they are cloud native. It's just that we are moving the load into the cloud, right? Similarly, a cloud native application need not be deployed only on the cloud. You can also deploy it on your local data center. It still should follow those patterns and architecture decisions. So for a cloud native, for a lift and shift approach, the positive or the advantages is that we don't need any code change. We don't need any architecture change. And since we are moving it onto a cloud, for example, you can provision the hardware that is required for your application. Maybe your application needs a specific version of OS and a specific hardware to run these applications. So in a lift and shift approach, you just move your entire workload, the entire artifact. It could be a jar, war, or any other artifact. You move it to the cloud. What is the drawback? The drawback is this approach does not solve any of your problems. right? You just get a feel, or you just get a hands-on on how to get things deployed onto the cloud. That's the only advantage that we get in a lift and shift. Uh, uh, Otherwise, the problem that existed with your monolithic applications, they continue to exist on the cloud as well. But it's a very good starting point for people who don't know how to start with their journey, right? So you move your application, your monolithic application onto the cloud, uh, and then you start breaking your application from there into small services. The second approach that we took was the re-platforming. Now, this is something that you take an application, you do not do major changes on it, but you actually do some small changes. Like, for example, you can containerize your application and run it. So that way you're ready for scaling out. You're ready for a higher available system. Your systems are reliable. And since it is containerized, your dependency on the underlying OS and the hardware is very limited. Now, the last approach is refactoring of this code. Now, this has a lot of advantages. Uh, Advantage being you're saving a lot of cost over a period of time. It might not be available, or it might not be seen immediately, but over a period of time, you realize that you're saving a lot of cost. Upgrades and hardware failures are your applications are agnostic to this, right? Uh, Availability, you can deploy your applications onto multi clouds. You can deploy it on multi data centers, and your systems applications availability is guaranteed for. Uh, the only drawback that I see is refactoring a complete application, especially a monolith which has been there in the system in the ecosystem for quite a while. The problem is, to refactor that, you need time and skills, right? The other bigger challenge that I see is many of the scope of this application changes because you're doing a refactoring, right? Uh, what I mean by that is you cannot do an exact replica of what you did on the monolithic architecture. Now, since you're going microservice and assuming that you're going to follow a domain-driven architecture here, you need to define boundaries. Now, that's a little different from what you had in the monolithic architecture. Now, since you start defining boundaries, each of these services have to communicate with each other. The testing, the way you test these applications now start to differ, right? So this is the only challenge that I see, but otherwise it comes with a lot more flexibility over a period of time. Now, cloud native maturity model. So the Tanzu team have come up with this maturity model. So like I said, you're not cloud native if you move your application to the cloud, right? So when we start with, we first have to focus on how to make it cloud ready. What that means is your application should not have any permanent disk access. You do not write it to a specific location. Your logs are aggregated. Your logs are streamed to a centralized location. Your application is self-contained. Containerization helps here, right? Right from the OS libraries all the way to the application stack, everything is within your container. You do not, you're agnostic to your surroundings. The platform now manages your port and network. We do not have to manage any of these. A cloud-ready service will consume platform-managed backing services like a database or a queue or a cache, right? We do not have, these should be provided as a service rather than having it as a hard-coded property in your application. Your application, once you follow these standards, your application is now cloud ready. You should be able to deploy this to any of the cloud instances, right? Now, cloud friendly. Uh, if your application follows the 12-factor app practices, if your application is ready for a horizontal scalability, if the application leverages the platform for higher availability. In this case, your application becomes cloud friendly. Now, 12-factor app, they give 12 principles that we have to follow for deploying a micro or for the microservices architecture, right? Along with that, I would recommend we follow the solid principles as well. So these principles, what it makes is it makes your application predictable. I know that okay, these are the things that are going in because of these patterns, right? Whereas in a monolith we did not have any such thing. It was a broad pattern that was like which was very unpredictable for failures. And the third stage is cloud resilient. At this stage, our application should be fault tolerant and it should have a resilient design. Any failures should not impact my availability, my application's availability. The cloud agnostic runtime implementation. Again, we should not tie up our application for a specific cloud runtime implementation, right? It should be agnostic to all these things. Metrics and monitoring should be bundled within your ecosystem. The hardware and the software should be provided so that everything is monitored and you collect all the metrics for that. Proactive failure testing. Now, this is very, very critical. So it is not just the testing that you do across your products or the projects. You should also test everything surrounding it. You should test for failures for your hardware. You should test for failures for your network. You should test for every single failure, right? So what does that mean? So we should have something like a chaos testing. This is not an easy task to achieve, but this is mandatory that anyone who wants to go to the cloud native architecture, they should follow this. They should implement cloud chaos testing. There are a lot of libraries available for this. One example could be the Chaos Kong or the Chaos Monkey that was introduced by Netflix. So we did that, and that's a topic by itself. We can talk about that for more than an hour, right? Uh, I suggest anyone who wants to go there, please try your hands on chaos testing. And finally, your application becomes cloud native if you follow proper microservices architecture and we follow the API first design. So all these services themselves communicate through APIs, right? And we predominantly use the REST APIs. It's up to some of them. They also use the other architectures as well. With all this in place, we also need agility. So for that, we need DevOps. So before the invent of all this cloud native and the cloud concept, the way we were working was there were siloed approach. Development team just develops their application. There was a separate operations team which used to manage only the hardware part of it, right? This caused a lot of delay. So if there was a need for additional hardware, there was a different process where we will have to request for it, someone provisions it for us, and then hands it over to us. There was a lot of issues with configuration management. There was a configuration drift across different instances, and the dev team was not would not be aware of all these things, whereas the operations team would not be aware of what are the code changes that are going into the application. So there was always a conflict, and there was always a delay. Like I mentioned earlier, this caused slower deployments as well. We had to finalize on a specific date so that the operations team was aware that, hey, these are the applications going in, and this has a dependency on this OS or these underlying infrastructure. So based on that, we will deploy these applications on only maybe a month later, right? So we had to get these two teams aligned. So instead of siloed approach, we had to get them together, right? So developer and operations team work as a single unit. That eventually was called as the DevOps. And with that, we had the continuous integration and the continuous delivery as well, right? So continuous integration was code, uh, build, and test. And for continuous deployment, you stage it and then release to production. So with these two teams coming in together, this whole CI and CD was seamless. So if you want to go cloud native and if you want to reap the benefits, complete benefits out of it, it means you have to have proper DevOps, right? And DevOps is not a tool. There is nothing like, okay, if I know these five different technologies or tool, then I become DevOps. No, it is a mindset. It's a practice. An entire organization should come together to get into this practice. Right. For this, so how did we start with? So we had a continuous planning and requirement. It is not just your project requirement, it is also along with your product, you also define your underlying infrastructure requirement. So we had platforms to do that, right? And the developer had complete access to the infrastructure. It is the infrastructure by itself is maintained through APIs. You have APIs through which you can provision your infrastructure, and it was much faster, right? And with containers, now the development can happen across different environments, like your dev test stage and prod. And because of the containers, you had a production-like environment everywhere, right? And also with the DevOps coming in, it was easy to provision a production-like environment for everyone. Continuous integration, this is very, very critical, because writing code and handing it over to the QA is all gone. It's a decade old system. Now, with all these things, and if we need agility, a developer has to develop, and also the testing has to be 100% automated, right? So with this, once a piece of code is developed, you push it, the pipeline pushes it to the next instance. It is completely tested. You don't need someone to come and manually validate this. The system takes care of it. Once the testing has been approved by the system, it is moved to the next instance, right? So that's how it is certified, validated, and moved across multiple environments. Continuous deployment. So once everything is tested, once your users give your sign off, it is easy for us to move the code or your artifacts uh, uh, from the artifactory into production. So the agility that we see today is, at least from our IT standpoint, we are able to do more than 2 releases per day. That's a big achievement. And bigger companies, they have, and 2 releases means I have 2 windows for releases into production, and the number of features keeps on increasing. So it's like hundreds of features could be released in these 2 deployment windows. Continuous infrastructure. So this is very important for us. This is the whole premise of this discussion, right? So the infrastructure also has to evolve along with us, right? So the provisioning cannot be a siloed provisioning. Provisioning is also now continuous deployment, right? So these are the aspects for DevOps and continuous integration and deployment. And I urge everyone to follow CI/CD and DevOps if you want to reap the benefits. What did we achieve? So with a cloud native architecture and a very flexible platform like Tanzu Application Service or TKG, this gave the developer community a free hand. We were able to move code. We were able to develop and move code much faster. Right, and with DevOps in place, the operations were ready for us supporting anything. We had a platform operations team which will manage the platform as such, and this is no more siloed approach. So now we build better software much faster. So let me reiterate what we discussed till now. Though this is all theory, and most of the enterprises, they follow this. This is what I see as the 3 pillars of transformation. The first one is you need cloud native infrastructure. We need a flexible infrastructure. We need a DevOps team, and this infrastructure should be available for the developer. So cloud native infrastructure, it is hidden behind a layer of abstraction. It is controlled by APIs, and it is managed by software, right? The software controlled infrastructure helps us to scale the infrastructure. We can have a resilient design. The provisioning and maintainability is much easier. So we need to have a cloud native infrastructure. So this is where platform as a service helps everyone, right? Like I said, the Tanzu application service is one such infrastructure. The TKG is one such infrastructure. the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid, sorry. Now, this is the infrastructure is ready. Development team, hey, go create applications which are cloud native. Start with cloud friendly and move it all the way to cloud native. And the third biggest culture change that is required is your DevOps culture. No more siloed approaches, no more operations team, and no more development team. We have a team together, which is your DevOps team. All right, now back to our journey. So we started, we predominantly had Spring MVC applications before we started this journey. What that means is most of our developers, they were hands-on with all the Spring application architectures, right? With Tanzu application services, it was easy for us because the task or the Tanzu application service, it gave a runtime for Spring Boot microservice. We had the flexibility to deploy the applications to multi-cloud and multi-data center. In our case, we had 2 data centers where we deployed all our applications. The platform itself was available on 2 different data centers. Tanzu application services, it had support for the Spring Cloud services. One of the key features for microservices is discovery of the services, having configurations outside of your applications, and to have circuit breakers. So these kind of services were provided by Tanzu application service. It also gave us the development team to automatically scale the applications based on the need. It could be based on the CPU utilization, or it could be based on the number of requests. You can configure it. Right. So if there is, for example, a Black Friday sale, or if there is a big $1 billion sale, the developer can go and scale it. Or in fact, in some cases, we just configure it, and the tool or the system itself knows how to scale it automatically. And scaling is not just expanding it outward, right? You can also scale it down. So once a spike slows down, this system automatically brings it down to what it was normal. Right, the Tanzu application service, it comes with a lot of metrics monitoring. We have the metrics which are collected, and these can also be integrated to the other observability systems like Wavefront. We also have these marketplaces where we have services that can be integrated to our applications using service brokers. For example, a database as a service, right? So you can spin up your own MySQL database and use it with your application. It is that simple. You don't have to wait for someone else to do that for you. So with all these, these are not just advantages. It worked in favor of us because we already had a Spring background, and the Spring Cloud services, they enabled us to move much faster. It is all configuration than coding, right? Like say, for example, Eureka service. You just create a service, you deploy it, and it's up and running. And all your other client services, all that you have to say is, okay, here is where my Eureka is running. This is the endpoint for it, and the system takes care of itself. Right. With this, it was much easier for us to move or refactor our applications and move into Tanzu application services. So this is our overall architecture. So we have our applications running on 2 data centers. Outside our network, the request comes through a content delivery network. It could be any of that of your choice. And then we have a local traffic manager, an external one. And then we have reverse proxies in our DMZ layer. And the internal firewalls, we have the NSX Edge, which acts as a load balancer. It acts as, it gives a lot more flexibility at the edge, right? We also have an NSX load balancer. And the application, these Tanzu application service and the Tanzu Kubernetes grid, they are deployed on VMware Cloud Foundation. It is so flexible that you can decide how to orchestrate this. You can have active setup, across both the data centers, and you'll have to be a little cautious there if your data, especially if you're using ERP systems, or you can have an active standby setup. And this can be completely automated. And from a VMware IT, SaaS IT standpoint, we have both these approaches. We are able to do active for some cases, and in some cases we have an active standby, and there are applications which will trigger failover to the standby systems based on some logic, right? And these are all connected to the corporate WAN, and we have a separate management stack. This again is a set of VMware products. We have the vRealize Ops monitoring tool. We have the vRealize login site for log aggregation and viewing. We have the vRealize code stream for deployment. So vRealize code stream is what we use in VMware IT for CI and CD. And then we have the vRealize automation for provisioning of these systems. And the observability of all these things, including the applications deployed plus the hardware and the infrastructure, everything is monitored through a Wavefront. It's called as Tanzu Observability. So this is an overall architecture how we have deployed this. And again, things could go wrong if you do not architect it correctly, right? If you have tight coupling between two services, then don't expect magic to happen because Tanzu application services should be doing it. No, it is not, right? So for that, let's ensure that you deploy an app which is cloud native. If you deploy a cloud native app, these systems will take care of the rest of the stuff, right? Let's get into a little detail architecture of Tanzu application service, the multi-data center setup. This is the Tanzu application service. So we have created 3 zones per data center. These are the ESXi cluster or the vSphere cluster that we have created. We have 3 different clusters running. And the entire Tanzu application service is hosted on 2 different data centers. NSX Edge, again, it becomes a gateway as well as a load balancer. It has more features to it, but to simplify it, these are features that you can see being provided by the NSX Edge. The apps are deployed there, and you have the Go router, which helps route the traffic to the correct application. The Diego cell management manages your containers within the ecosystem. And then there are jobs which you can schedule. There are tile services, the marketplace services, where you can, not just the marketplace, you also have the Spring Cloud services there. You can go and create your own instance of a cache, for example, Redis cache, or you can have your own queue like RabbitMQ, DB like a MySQL, and all the Spring Cloud services are also provided as a tile. Right, that includes service discovery. It also includes API, the config servers as well. So config servers are important because one of these 12-factor app, based on one of the 12-factor app principles, you are supposed to keep your configuration outside of your code. Right? You have the ops manager and the BOSH, which does all the management of the above layers. Right. So this is our production and non-production setup. On the non-production setup, we also have it only on a single data center, which is running on a private cloud. The management cluster remains the same. It is managed by the different suite that we saw. So just think about the ecosystem. I'll go back to the previous slide, right? So this 80% of the stack is completely made of VMware stack. Right, this entire stack that you see on the management layer, this entire data center foundation and all the application, the platforms that are deployed, everything is a VMware product, including the NSX Edge and the NSX load balancer. We are also having the traffic managers right now, which is also an VMware product. So everything, this ecosystem is completely driven and managed by VMware products. I'm very proud to say that. So this is the high-level architecture of VMware Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. Uh, so again, this is a simple, and most of you who have worked with Kubernetes should be aware of this. You have a master, excuse me. You have a master control plane, master nodes, set of master nodes. Again, you do a replica of them so that it is highly available. And then you have a set of nodes where your actual workload is running. Those are called the worker nodes, and these are managed by the Kubernetes control plane and HCD and other stuff, right? So that is the basic Kubernetes. On top of that, we have our NSX Advanced Load Balancer, right? The ingress could be managed through the NSX Advanced Load Balancer. And this again has all these management suite which are managing these things, right? Managing the entire TKG platform. We have the log insight, which is for the log aggregation and viewing the logs. We have the Tanzu observability called as the Wavefront prior to this. So all your KPIs can be managed here, right? It's a wonderful tool to manage all the data. We also have the Tanzu application catalog for managing for getting all the images. Then we have NSX Advanced Load Balancer, NSX Container plugin, and then the platform themselves is TKG. Uh, so everything you see the stack, it is all the entire VMware stack, right? So this is how we have set up the multi-data center for TKG. Very similar approach what we had for TAS as well. Here we just have the master and the worker nodes, and all the applications are deployed on the worker nodes. Again, it's up to the architecture team and up to the developers to decide whether they want to have active or to have active standby, right? All right, wrapping up on this session, what did we achieve by doing all these things? With all the new platforms set up and all our applications being cloud native, and we have a complete modern application. By the way, did you notice that I was talking more about our data centers? We also have some of our applications running on VMware Cloud on AWS. So we have 3 data centers, 2 in-house, and one is VMware Cloud on AWS. Okay. What are the benefits? Now, as I said, we had faster deployments. Our development cycle has reduced a lot because we focus more on the business priorities. Developer focuses on development, and he is completely authorized to move his code. Of course, it has to be certified by the CI and CD platforms and then taken to production. But compared to a waterfall model where we went once in a month or twice a month, today we are doing twice a day releases. Auto scaling, I don't need anyone to be on standby during peak hours. We don't need a bunch of people from different teams to go and change the load balancer settings or provision new VMs to deploy applications. Everything is taken care of. You just configure it and everyone has a peaceful evening, right? Reduce downtime. Since we have, it's not just the application and it's not just the infrastructure, it is also the application which is now cloud native. We have a lot of, we are agnostic to any failures. We are resilient. Infrastructure is resilient as well as the applications. Like in the previous slide you saw, we deployed to multiple data centers. So even if the entire data center was down due to maybe a power failure or something, the application is still up and running because we are running it on the other data center as well, right? So this greatly reduces the downtime. One other key thing here is most of the planned downtimes are because of upgrades, right? Now here, since we are agnostic to the underlying OS or underlying infrastructure, our downtime reduced significantly. And we are close to a 4 nines availability, right? And platform agnostic. So my applications are totally platform agnostic, which means a code that I developed and tested on my laptop or on a dev machine still works fine on a production machine. There is no more this standard statement or code saying that it works on my machine. I don't know why it fails on the other machine, right? So those things are gone. And I'm sure if people have already migrated to cloud or cloud native, you should hardly hear those statements anymore, right? And the last one I like about it is service ownership, right? Now developers are authorized. Developers own the system, right? Uh, so you have this service ownership. So anything good or bad is on you, right? And mostly it is good because you crossed all these stages. Definitely you're not going to fail. So service ownership gives that authority to a developer, and you should see that in your development community as well. Once you give that authority, it doesn't matter the hierarchy of your organization. They feel proud. They feel like they own this application, right? This is very I see that as a very nice thing that happened because of this cloud native migration.